Welcome to Swank and Mentz Off the Fence, where Mr. Mentz and Mrs. Swank answer questions related to whatever topics you provide.
If you are a student at GCHS, listen up.
Nothing we say here is the express opinion or view of Greensburg Community Schools, but if you have a question burning a hole through your brain, email us.
Who knows, your question might inspire us. Now let's get on with the show.
All right, Mentz, episode 1.
Episode 1.
We didn't even really talk about a title.
No, we didn't.
Unprepared.
We could call this unprepared.
Unprepared.
This is like episode 1 point something.
Yes. We've tried, this is our 4th go-round, right?
Something
We can get
along
this
those
right.
lines. Yeah,
We can totally get this right.
we got this.
All right, so we're going to start off with how the kids are always curious about. How did you guys decide to do this? And I don't know if your recollection will be the same as mine,
It's
but
terrible.
go ahead. You first.
Me first.
You first.
I think I approached you with it anyways, right?
I think you did, yeah.
Well, I think the idea, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't know that my students, they typically don't. They just listen to garbage music, but that's beside the point.
Get after it.
I think we just identified that there was just a lack of spirit, kind of just a lot of empty shells of students walking around the hallways and, just trying to figure out a solution for that. We were just, spitballing ideas and had just our real world experience and the way that we communicate with each other just felt like it was real. It felt like it was organic, and that it just seemed right to just every time that we had a conversation, it seemed like a really good conversation, a valuable conversation that that would be also valuable for the students to hear, because we weren't always just in the room. I don't know, just saying what was wrong. We always were trying to figure out the way we could fix it. So that for me was the reason that I came to you about the idea of a podcast. We were able to just bounce ideas off of each other really well.
Yeah, and kind of like, what do you think of this? Or what would you say to a kid that brought you this idea?
Right.
I think there was something about, because, I've been teaching, this is my 20th year. So, oof, I know, right? Stop it. So it was kind of like something like, hey, Swank, do kids ever ask you stuff that's outside the realm of school? And I was like, sure, yeah. And then, of course, all the flashbacks come to me, right? Like, oh, this kid asked me this or that or whatever. And we got on that topic of conversation about, how can we impact kids beyond the classroom when they do seek information. They really, really do. Beyond, beyond the English teacher, construction trades teacher, that kind of thing, And this seemed like a kind of fun thing to do, too.
Yeah.
Let them come up with the questions, which I guess we should say, because we don't really plan to create any questions.
Right. No, if we create them, then, we're old, so.
Yeah, I mean, you're old.
I'm
not old. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, age is just a number, right? Yeah, they won't be as interesting because our interests do not align usually with a student's interest, but we've lived in their shoes, so.
Right. I can tell you that so remember we put out the Google form and said, hey, Swank and Mentz are going to do a podcast, put some questions out, and that kind of just fell on its head.
Yeah.
And then, a couple weeks ago, we were really getting serious, and the questions that the kids have asked, there's 40 or 50 questions that are just really good quality questions we can pull from. And then we're always going to be taking, which I guess we should say, hey, kids, email us. We already just said that, but we'll always take new stuff into the pool. Mm-hmm. So you never know.
Yeah.
And then I know they also were thinking of, how did you get that name? How do we get Swank and Mentz Off the Fence? And I think this is kind of interesting because your take on it was totally different than mine. It made total sense, though.
Yeah, I didn't like any of the submitted names.
Right.
But usually my students' ideas aren't at the top of my list. So it wasn't until you told me that what your favorite was that it really actually resonated with me. Because when I first read Off the Fence, in baseball terms, that means that you're not powerful enough to hit a home run. And I didn't want to be associated with that. But it also it made me just think about like a ball that gets hit to the outfield. I was an outfielder in college. And like a ball that gets hit off the fence and kind of caroms off, and you have to go chase it down, and kids end up getting a triple out of it. It's just, they're just like two negative things.
I should have known, because your face, when I said it, I was like, I really like off the fence. And you looked at me like 3 heads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But my take on it was, I didn't think baseball at all.
Right.
I was like, okay, we're not on the fence. We're off the fence. We have an opinion. We're not waffling, right? We have something to say.
Yeah.
And as soon as I said that, I saw your face go, yep, I didn't even think about that. And you said baseball, and I was like, okay, outfielder stuff or whatever.
Yeah. No, once you said it, it definitely hit me. Like, that's the name. It's got to be our name.
Yeah. And then, remember, they were trying to get us to name it Swentz?
Yeah.
Which
that's brutal.
Yeah, it's awful.
I'm so
sorry,
glad
kid.
we didn't do
sorry,
that.
whichever kid said that. We still love you.
Sorry, we're not sorry.
Right. All right, so the last thing would be, we started recording what we thought would be episode 1, and then we sort of realized that in order to do this the right way, we have to tell the kids a little bit about our story, so that when we're talking about the Marines or talking about the Army or talking about this or that, they have a little bit of a background.
Right.
So
you go first on this one.
Okay.
You always make me go first.
I do. Okay, I'll go first. So I got out of high school, and within a couple weeks I was in the Army. I just enlisted there's a lot of kids that do that here too. They enlist while they're still seniors. And February of my senior year, I enlisted, signed up for an MOS, which is a specialty job. Everybody has one, at least in the Army. We call them MOSs, military occupational specialties, or at least I did back in my day. And didn't even know hardly what it was, because the recruiter played some interesting little games with me, and I was like, oh, electronics and missile systems, that sounds good, yeah. And then the summer right after senior year, I was in basic in South Carolina. So I spent almost 4 years in the Army, learned a bunch about myself and my potential. Really changed me. I mean, how can the military not, I would think? And I was stationed all over the U.S. for different reasons. I'm sure we'll get into various stories about that. The number one thing kids ask me is, how much, did you see combat? And it's like, well, no, because I was in from 92 to 96. So thankfully, I didn't see I don't see the whole war games, combat, video game kind of like glory. Although I have huge respect for combat veterans and always will, I don't see it as I missed my opportunity, that kind of thing. I just feel more fortunate that I didn't. But I did feel very prepared to do it, which is, good, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got out in 96 and ended up going to college and ended up started teaching at 27. So it was a little bit later. The Army made it so everything was a little bit later, but I know your story is very, very different than mine. So
Yeah, it's almost reverse.
It in a way it is, yeah.
Yeah.
So your turn.
Did you shoot HIMAR missiles while you were in?
I did not.
Because those things are pretty cool.
I did not. It was Patriot, Hawk, Avenger, multiple launch rocket system. That was kind of my era.
Got it. I got some videos I'll show you of the HIMARS that we were shooting in Syria.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I suppose I didn't really know exactly what you did until now.
See, we can learn from each other too.
That's how much we really don't talk about the military when
It's
we're
all
together
about
anyways.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my story is a little bit different. Out of high school, I graduated in 2005, so 9/11 was actually really still fresh in everybody's minds. I wasn't convicted then or compelled to go into the military because I had been chasing a baseball dream my entire life. And so I got a scholarship to go play baseball at Ball State, and I went to go study architecture there. So I really felt like I had I was chasing my dreams going to Ball State, and none of that worked out whatsoever, but I'm glad that it didn't. I hated architecture school. Switched my major to construction management, continued to play baseball. I even transferred schools to Northern Kentucky.
That's where I got my BA.
Yeah, it was a good school.
Yeah. It was English. I know, shocker. But it was a good school. It was.
Yeah.
That was D1. You played. Was
They
it
are
D1
now.
when you
It
played
was
ball?
Division II when I moved over to NKU. I think the year after I graduated, switched over to D1.
Figures.
Yeah, and that's okay. D2 was actually a really cool experience. When I first got there, they were still a wooden bat league. And so we were the last wooden bat college league in the nation. And that made things pretty interesting. I was used to using a wooden bat in fall ball and some summer ball leagues, but that was pretty neat. So anyways, I graduated. I spent 5.5 years in college.
Nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, well, I didn't take college seriously until my halfway through my junior year, probably.
You know what's funny is the way that college, we'll have to do another episode on this, but the way that college works sometimes, whether you take it seriously or not, you end up spending more time because the way the credits fall. So I was over 4 years too.
Yeah.
I was a little nerd though, but.
Well, I transferred and I changed my major, but I also almost got kicked out my freshman year.
That's going to have to be an episode.
Yeah. Well, I just, I had perfect attendance in school from like preschool all the way through senior year of high school. Like didn't miss one day. And then I started missing some days when I went to college.
You know, the kids have quite a few questions related to how do I do this? Like when I get out of high school, what am I going to face? And
yeah.
I can see that sort of experience,
I can tell you what not to do.
I think that's what they want to hear from us about, though.
Yeah.
You know,
keeping it real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost failed out my freshman year. I had to really, when I transferred, I thought, oh, this is going to be a new experience. I'm going to turn things around. And I still just didn't care about school. I still cared about baseball. That was pretty much why I was there. But we're not going to go down that road today. Anyways, I got into a lot of stuff when I was in college that, contrary to being a professional and what you see now. But 5.5 years I spent at NKU. I graduated from there in 2011. And I started working for a big construction contractor in Cincinnati. I did that for 3 years as a construction superintendent, just working on huge projects. I built a Kroger. I built a couple, several hundred unit apartment complexes and stuff like that. I was the sole superintendent on a couple of those jobs, just big multi-million-dollar projects that I just got thrust into right after college, and I just didn't particularly enjoy it. I was making really good money. I was wasting a lot of money too while I was there. So just some more what not to do's down the road.
It's going to be interesting.
And then I just wasn't feeling fulfilled still. And my father was a Marine, so I thought, you know what, why not give it a shot?
How old were you then?
I was 25 when I decided to go into the Marines. It took me almost 2 years to actually get in.
Because you were trying to get in, or because you had to make that mental leap? No.
When I first started approaching the recruiters about getting into the military, I had gone through college. I had an opportunity to do stuff that was pretty stupid, and they recognized that. And so there was a couple more hoops that I needed to jump through in order to get in.
Gotcha.
And at first I wanted to go be an officer. So I was kind of bouncing back and forth between being an officer and being enlisted. And ultimately I chose to go enlisted, and I'm glad that I did.
Yeah, we probably should explain that a little bit. I have to do that in class with kids, the difference, just a little bit.
Yeah. So officer is basically who is commanding the enlisted troops. So an officer has to have a college degree. Minimum, and then they go to officer school, and enlisted goes to basic or boot camp, and just the officer automatically starts out in front of the enlisted.
Leadership.
In a leadership position.
It's a parallel track is what I like to say. Like, you can stay your whole life, you can do 30 years in and be enlisted and be high ranking in the enlisted, and you could be in a leadership position, but you're not going to enter into an enlistment with any kind of leadership at all. Whereas the officers, boom, you're a second. I mean, at least it's different. Every branch is different, right? But in the Army, a second lieutenant is like the lowest of the officer. It's a parallel. I'm sure the Marines are the same way. We have our own enlisted versus officer, have our own jokes and trying to navigate this here a little bit. Our own way of viewing enlisted troops versus officer troops.
Right. Well, it was the same kind of when I went into the construction industry, I was put in charge of guys who had been in for 20 and 30 years because I had a college degree that didn't mean squat to those dudes.
Right.
And then when you go into the military, it's the same thing. A guy who's straight out of officer candidate school is coming to be in charge of maybe a 12-year gunny or staff sergeant. And they're day one, they're already in a leadership position over them. So it's the same kind of sentiment. And I mean, you see it in the real world, but it's exaggerated in the military.
There's some good depictions of this in war movies where you have like the lieutenant who's kind of younger and just kind of green. You have in our case, it would be the first sergeant or, who's leading the platoon or the company, who's really looked upon like, okay, you've got all this experience even though you're enlisted and I outrank you as a lieutenant, but you're the baby officer versus we're probably getting into the minutia here a little bit too much.
A little bit.
You gotta pull it back. We'll get into that at some point.
Yeah.
See what I did? Just
I know.
derailed it.
Yeah, well, if we had 45 minutes, we would fill it up.
You were just going into the Marines.
Right. So, yeah, I decided to enlist, and I went in. I turned 27 boot camp. The next closest guy, I think, was like 23.
You were the old man.
I was the old man. They called me the old man, actually, so it wasn't very fun. But I also got respect right off the bat just because of that. I was a hard charger. If anyone's had me, they understand what that means. But immediately day one, I'm thrust into a leadership role. They make me the guide at boot camp, and it's kind of an uncomfortable leadership role to just be thrust into a role that you have no idea what you're doing. And that has just kind of been a theme for my entire life. Like when I graduated from college and they were like, hey, you're going to run this multi-million-dollar job. Good luck down there in Southern Kentucky living by yourself, in a town where you aren't unfamiliar and no friends. And yeah, so that's kind of a theme in my life.
Don't you find though that when you're given that kind of challenge, you either have that grit to rise to it or you kind of crumble under it. And sure, there's middle ground. There's people who kind of flail around and get better at it. But I think that you and I are the kind of people that go, okay, I'm out of my comfort zone, but let's do this.
Yeah. On the surface, I will probably look like I'm calm, cool, and collected, and just determined to get it done. But like deep down, you feel like an imposter in those roles. No matter what level you get to, no matter how comfortable you look. I have always felt like an imposter, like I'm not good enough for those roles. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with. We can make a whole episode out of that as well.
It's like fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
There's something to that, because if on the outside you're projecting that confidence, and look at us, we're going right into
a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
Just let me tell my story, Swank.
I know, sorry. I mess you up.
Anyways, I did 4 years in the Marine Corps. I went through boot camp as a leader. I got into infantry school. They made me a leader right off the bat. I tried to go to recon. After halfway through infantry school, they were like, "Hey, go to recon. It's very similar to Special Forces, kind of like a mix between SF, like Army Special Forces, and Navy SEALs. Like there's a lot of swimming involved. Anyways, it's really, really physically demanding, which I had no problem with, but there was a lot of swimming. And when I went there, I was fairly certain that I was going to make it, and I didn't make it very long there.
The swimming was...
Yeah, that was the first time I'd ever really failed at anything in my entire life, and it was pretty sobering. And so I ended up having to finish... We'll have another episode on that, don't worry, guys. I had to finish infantry school before I got dropped into a unit, an infantry unit, which was really a blessing in my eyes, because the unit that I would have graduated with didn't end up doing anything. So even though there was some combat zones in the Middle East, the unit that I would have been with went to like Japan, Okinawa, just did some MEUs. floating around on ships, and I ended up going to the Middle East. So I was at least thankful for that. I went to a unit in California that was out in the desert, in the Mojave Desert, and we lived out there and for 4 years and trained out there, and it was a really awesome experience, even though it sucked a lot.
And where did sniper school come in to this?
Yeah, so once you get to infantry school in the Marines, you have the opportunity to try out for it's called an NDOC. It's basically a tryout for a sniper platoon, and that's a week-long just haze fest, basically. Even though you're not really allowed to say that, but it kind of is. It's just a lot of really hard work, probably the hardest work of your life up to that point. I made it through that, and I had an opportunity to go to sniper school, before my first deployment, and I actually failed out of sniper school the first time I went. I can say with 99.9% certainty that it wasn't my fault that I failed out, but I was the one pulling the trigger. So I failed on the range on a really windy day, and you have a spotter who's calling your shots for you and making all of your adjustments for you, so you're relying on your spotter very heavily. And I missed by one shot.
You know, knowing you, it's like if someone's listening to this and they don't know you, right? I can see somebody saying, "Oh, this guy, like he's blaming the spotter." I can imagine it, but just hearing you say that, I'm like, no, you don't say stuff like that unless it's.
Yeah, I don't push off the blame, and I mean, coincidentally, on the same range for pre-sniper. So before you go to sniper school, you have to go to 6-week pre-sniper school. And I actually, with the same gun on the same range, shot at 100%, and they said that's never been done before. So it wasn't the trigger puller in this case. At least I don't think it was.
Did you get to recycle?
So I got dropped, had to go back to my unit, and then so I went on my first deployment as a pig. In the sniper community, you're swine, and you're a pig, and then you're a hog if you actually go to school. So a swine is just someone who's gone through the NDOC, made it into a platoon, but hasn't gone to school or any kind of specialized schools. And then you're a pig, I suppose, if you've gone to like pre-sniper school. Different platoons call them different things, but a pig is a professionally instructed gunman.
Got it. I was wondering if that was just flattery or.
Yeah, no, it wasn't flattering. And then a hog is a hunter of gunmen.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
makes sense.
So
acronyms. It's all about acronyms.
Yeah, I was gonna say acronym, but I thought maybe it was a different word.
Nope, you got it.
Okay.
I got your back.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyways, I went on my first deployment as a pig, and then I came back and went to school again. I had to go to pre-sniper school again, which is kind of a haze fest, for the second time, and then went to sniper school.
At least you knew what to expect.
Blew it out. Yeah, blew it out of the water.
So then you were a hog.
Then I became a hog, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and actually there's another level above that. It's called Razorback. I didn't make it to Razorback, but if you go to all the advanced sniper schools, you become a Razorback.
See all the things that we learn from each other?
Yeah, we're pushing this thing.
I know. We got to keep this. We got to cut this off. That's good enough. I mean, did we cover it all? Because I knew you were. I
think so. We got like way too.
It's okay. That was mainly my fault. Mainly.
You're asking too many questions.
I know. I can't help it. All right. So you want to wrap this up? Episode 1?
Yeah, let's do it.
What did we say we're going to call this? See, we have to. I don't know. It was.
This episode?
Unprepared.
Unprepared. Yeah. Episode 1.2.
Unprepared is now finito.
Finito.
Right. I don't even know if that's actual.
Is that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. We're good to go. That's all for today.
Remember, if you're a student at GCHS,
email us a question. Yours might be next.
Thanks for listening.